My wife told me she was taking our kids to see her parents. But the odometer on her car told a different story. An extra 400 miles of lies every single week. By the time I was finished, her lover didn't just lose his mistress. He lost his job, his house, and his dignity. He thought he could burn my life down, so I set fire to his entire world. If you believe that loyalty is everything and betrayal deserves a reckoning, hit that subscribe button right now. Today, we're diving into a story of cold, calculated justice that proves you should never underestimate a man with nothing left to lose. Let's get into it. They say the truth will set you free, but they never tell you how much it burns before the liberation kicks in. Back in the early 2000s, I lived a life that felt solid. I had a decent job, a home in a quiet neighborhood, and 2 kids, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, who were the center of my universe. My wife, let's call her Sarah, worked part-time, and on the days she didn't, she was supposed to be the glue holding our domestic world together. But the glue started to feel thin. It started with small things. A shift in her gaze, a phone that was suddenly always face down on the nightstand, and a part-time job that seemed to require more and more administrative hours. But the real red flag came from the mouths of babes. Our kids were young, but they were observant. They started talking about Grandma and Grandpa's house. A lot. "We went to the big park near Grandma's today," my daughter would chirp over her cereal. Again, I'd ask, looking at Sarah, "That's the 3rd time this week. Your parents live 90 minutes away. That's a 3-hour round trip. Isn't that exhausting?" Sarah would just shrug, her voice airy and dismissive. "Oh, you know how Mom gets. She misses the kids. It's no big deal." But it was a big deal. It was a massive deal. The math didn't add up. Every day she wasn't at her job, she claimed to be making that grueling trek. I'm a logical man. I don't like things that don't balance. So, one Monday morning before I left for work, I took a mental note of the odometer in her SUV. When I checked it again on Friday, my stomach dropped through the floor. 400 miles. She had driven 400 miles in 4 days that weren't accounted for by work or grocery runs. I tried to talk to her. I wanted to give her a bridge back to me. I asked her point blank, "Are you sure you're going to your parents' house every day? That's a lot of driving, Sarah." She looked me in the eye and lied with a fluency that terrified me. Yes, why would I lie about that? But Sarah was never actually a good liar. She was just a bold one. She relied on my desire to believe her. But that desire was dying. The air in our house started to feel heavy, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. I felt this constant, low-grade vibration in my chest, anxiety, paranoia, or maybe just the survival instinct of a man sensing his life was about to be upended. The breaking point came with a yellow sticky note. It was sitting right there, next to the family computer. In the early 2000s, the internet was still a bit of a novelty for us, but AOL was our window to the world. Sarah had written her password down, probably for herself, but fate had other plans. I remember the sound of the dial-up modem, that screeching static hiss, feeling like it was scratching the inside of my brain. I logged in. My hand was shaking so violently I missed the keys twice. Then, the "You've got mail" icon blinked. I opened her sent folder. There were dozens of emails to her college best friend. I didn't find love letters. I found a confession booth. Sarah was bragging. She was detailing how she dropped the kids off at her parents' house, using her own mother as an unwitting babysitter for her infidelity, so she could go meet an ex-boyfriend from high school. The emails were cruel. They weren't just about the affair. They were about the mockery of our life. She talked about how boring I was, how stifled she felt. But the part that made my blood turn to ice was when she started making fun of the guy's wife. She called her fat, mocked how she'd let herself go after having 3 kids, and laughed about how easy it was to steal her husband's time. I sat in that glowing blue light of the monitor for hours, printing every single exchange. I felt a coldness settle over me. The man who had walked into that room, wanting to fix his marriage, died that night. The man who replaced him was a strategist. I stashed the papers in a place she'd never find them. I had the what, but I still needed the who and the where. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to ensure that whatever structure she was building her new life on was made of matchsticks. The next few weeks were a living hell. Have you ever had to kiss someone you know is betraying you? Have you ever had to sit across the dinner table and listen to them talk about their day, knowing every word is a calculated deception? Every time I looked at my kids, my heart broke. I grew up in a house where my parents cheated on each other. I remember the screaming matches, the broken glass, the way my siblings and I would hide in the closet, trying to make ourselves invisible. I had promised myself I would never put my children through that. Sarah had broken that promise for both of us. I needed professional help. I called an old friend on the force, and he pointed me toward Ron. Ron was a former cop turned private investigator. He was a man of few words and thick skin. I met him in a nondescript coffee shop, handed him the retainer, and gave him the printed emails. I need everything, I told him. My voice sounded foreign to me, hollow and sharp. I need names, addresses, photos. I need to know who this guy is and what he has to lose. Ron nodded, tucked the folder under his arm, and simply said, "I'll be in touch." While Ron was working, I had to play the part of the oblivious husband. It was the hardest acting job of my life. I'd watch Sarah get ready in the morning, putting on the perfume I'd bought her, wearing the clothes I'd complimented, and I knew she was doing it for him. The psychological toll was immense. I stopped sleeping. I'd lie in bed next to her, listening to her breathe, feeling like I was sleeping next to a stranger. I started losing weight. Every bite of food tasted like ash. I felt powerless, like I was watching a slow-motion car crash, and I was the one behind the wheel, unable to steer. Then, the report from Ron arrived. It was a thick, manila envelope. Inside was a meticulous timeline of my wife's betrayals. There were photos of her car parked at a dumpy, hourly rate motel on the edge of town. There were photos of them walking into a diner together, laughing, his arm around her waist. But most importantly, Ron had found the who. The guy's name was Bob. Bob wasn't just some high school sweetheart. He was a man who had built a very comfortable life on the back of a very specific lie. He was a vice president of sales for a successful local company. But here was the kicker. The company was owned by his father-in-law. Bob was married with 3 kids. He lived in a house that, according to property records Ron dug up, was actually owned by his wife's parents. Bob wasn't a wealthy sales exec. He was a pampered son-in-law who was biting the hand that fed him. I looked at the photos of Bob. He looked smug. He had that "I'm untouchable" grin that certain men get when they think they've outsmarted the world. I felt a surge of adrenaline. The powerlessness vanished, replaced by a crystalline focus. I didn't just want a divorce. I wanted a total structural collapse of Bob's reality. I wanted Sarah to see exactly what kind of hero she had chosen over our family. I went to a divorce lawyer, the meanest, most thorough one in the city. I want the papers drawn up, I told him. And I don't want her to see them coming until the trap is set. The lawyer looked over the PI report and whistled. This won't help much with the assets in this state, but it'll certainly set the tone. The tone isn't for the court, I replied. The tone is for the aftermath. I had Ron make 2 more copies of the report, one for me and one for a very special delivery. I was waiting for the perfect day, the day where the maximum amount of leverage could be applied. I spent those last few days in our house like a ghost. I'd look at the walls I'd painted, the furniture we'd picked out together, and I realized none of it mattered. It was all just wood and fabric. The only things that mattered were my kids and my dignity. I watched Sarah leave for work on a Wednesday morning. She kissed me on the cheek. I felt the skin crawl where her lips touched. "Have a good day," she said. "Oh, I'm planning on it," I replied. The clock started ticking at 9 a.m. Step 1. The lawyer. I gave the final go-ahead. Sarah was at her part-time job, a small office where everyone knew everyone. I wanted her to be served there. I wanted the embarrassment to be public. I wanted the veil of her perfect life to be ripped away in front of her colleagues. Step 2. The PI. I called Ron. "It's time," I said. "Are you in position?" "Parked right down the street from the wife's house," Ron confirmed. I had given Ron a specific set of instructions. He wasn't just going to drop off a folder. He was going to meet with Bob's wife. He was going to sit her down and show her the truth. I felt a twinge of guilt for her. She was an innocent bystander in this mess, but I kept thinking about those emails. I kept thinking about Sarah and Bob laughing about how she'd gotten fat after having Bob's children. She deserved to know the truth. She deserved to know she was married to a parasite. As I sat in my office, trying to pretend to work, I visualized the two scenes playing out simultaneously. In one, Sarah is sitting at her desk, perhaps typing an email to Bob about their next lunch date when a process server walks in. The confusion on her face, the way the color would drain from her lips as she realized she was being served with divorce papers. The hushed whispers of her coworkers as they realized the happy marriage was a sham. In the other, Ron is knocking on a heavy oak door. Bob's wife answers. She's probably tired, maybe dealing with one of their 3 kids. Ron identifies himself. He asks to come in. He lays out the photos on her kitchen table. The photos of her husband at the motel. The photos of him with Sarah. The printed emails where they mocked her body and her life. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. It wasn't joy. Joy was emotion for a different life. This was something deeper. This was the satisfaction of a master mason seeing a crooked wall finally being knocked down. I had meticulously timed everything. If Bob was at work, he was about to get a phone call. If he was at the motel, he was about to get a surprise. I sat back and waited for the fallout. The first call came from Sarah. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. What is this? Are you crazy? We need to talk right now. I turned my phone off. There was nothing left to say. The emails had said it all. The PI report had said it all. I had spent months being the one who was confused and hurting. Now, it was her turn to sit in the wreckage. But the real fireworks were happening across town at Bob's empire. You see, I hadn't just counted on Bob's wife being angry. I had counted on her family. Her father owned that company. Her father owned that house. Bob had built his entire identity on the generosity of people he was actively betraying. He was a VP of sales who couldn't even sell loyalty to his own wife. I heard later, through the grapevine and the court documents, exactly how that afternoon went for Bob. He was in a sales meeting, likely acting the part of the big shot executive when his father-in-law walked in. Not a phone call, not an email, a face-to-face confrontation in front of his entire staff. The father-in-law didn't scream. He just handed Bob a cardboard box and told him he had 10 minutes to clear out his desk. He told him he was fired for cause. Morality clauses in executive contracts are a beautiful thing. Bob went from vice president to unemployed in the span of a 60-second conversation. But I wasn't done. The burn-it-to-the-ground phase was only halfway through. When Bob finally slunk home, probably thinking he could manipulate his wife into taking him back, he found the locks changed. His suitcases were on the lawn. Not neatly packed, just thrown out. His wife's parents owned the house, and they had revoked his tenancy with the same ruthless efficiency they'd used to fire him. The story goes that Bob lost his cool. The smooth salesman disappeared, replaced by a desperate, cornered animal. He started pounding on the door, screaming at his wife, calling her every name in the book. He was throwing a tantrum because his free ride had come to a screeching halt. That's when her brother showed up. Apparently, the brother had seen the PI report too. He had seen the emails where Bob mocked his sister. He didn't use a lawyer. He used his fists. Bob ended up with a broken nose and a trip to the back of a police cruiser. By the time the sun went down on that Wednesday, Bob was unemployed, homeless, under arrest, and nursing a shattered face. My divorce from Sarah was surprisingly quiet after that. She tried to fight for a while, tried to play the victim, but I had the emails. I had the PI report. I didn't engage in the drama. Every time she tried to start an argument, I'd simply say, I have nothing to say to you that isn't about the kids. Talk to my lawyer. She eventually realized that the Bob she had risked everything for was a man of zero substance. He couldn't support her. He couldn't even support himself. He ended up leaving the state, fleeing the mountain of legal fees and the reputation he'd charred beyond recognition. I looked into the court records a year later. Bob's ex-wife did more than just survive. She thrived. She took over her father's company when he retired. She moved on with her life, stronger and wiser. I like to think that folder Ron handed her was the best gift she ever received, even if it was wrapped in a nightmare. As for me, I'm standing in a different place now. The kids are adults. They know the truth. Not the ugly, vengeful version, but the truth that their father stood up for himself and for them. I don't talk to Sarah anymore. I don't hate her. Hate requires energy, and I've spent enough energy on her to last a lifetime. She's just a person I used to know, the mother of my children, a ghost from a life I lived 20 years ago. Every now and then, I think about that extra 400 miles she used to drive. I think about the motel rooms and the emails and the mockery. And then I look at my life now. It's quiet. It's honest. It's mine. I didn't just burn his life to the ground. I cleared the land so I could build something real. And in the end, that's the best kind of revenge there is. Infidelity doesn't just break a heart. It breaks a contract of trust. When you choose to betray the people who love you, don't be surprised when the world you built on those lies eventually comes crashing down. Justice has a way of finding its way home. What do you think? Was the revenge too much? Or did Bob get exactly what he deserved? Let me know in the comments below. If you want more stories of people standing up for the truth, like this video and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.